Chapter 6. Elemental Training. Team X has started traveling through the jungle zone. Iria said that to get to the ancient zone, we have to go through here, informed Anna. I wonder why they haven't told you what element you're going to learn. Duran asked Kris. Beats the hell out of me, answered Kris. I don't think you should worry about that right now, Brandy said as she spotted a clear path. Kris, Duran, Anna, and Brandy continued to push forward, and made a lot of headway, mostly because of their willingness to work together, which had increased since their arrival in the Drasil universe. After a brief stop to rest, Team X come up to a structure resembling an ancient ruin. A gatekeeper is standing nearby and quickly stops Kris and his team. What is your business in the ancient zone? The gatekeeper inquired. Good, it's here, exclaimed Brandy as she attempted to step forward. A gray aura surrounded the gatekeeper, as Brandy slowly turned into stone. Hey, what the hell, yelled Duran. The same thing happened to Duran. You two still haven't told me why you want to enter the ancient zone. Do you even know what it is? The gatekeeper said as he smiled. Kris and Anna looked at each other and then turned their attention to the gatekeeper. Me and my team are supposed to meet Darren and Iria there. They are going to teach us the elements, Kris said as he slowly stepped in front of the gatekeeper. Our friends, you turned them into stone, Anna added. You are the ones? The gatekeeper asked. What do you mean? Asked a puzzled Kris. Well, at least 4 of the 8, the gatekeeper muttered. A brown aura surrounded the gatekeeper and the stone around Duran and Brandy's bodies shattered. You didn't see the amount of statues here. In the last few weeks, at least 20 people have come through here for no reason at all, the gatekeeper said as he walked toward a giant door. Has anyone been through here recently? Asked Duran as he continued to dust off the remaining particles of stone off of his clothes. If you are talking about the other 4, they have not arrived yet, the gatekeeper said. Great, our team will be the first to enter the ancient zone, said Brandy excitedly. The gatekeeper glanced at Kris and his team. Before I grant you access to the ancient zone, I must explain to you that this zone is the embodiment of the elements of the universe. There are beasts and apparitions everywhere. The ancient zone will take over your mind and eventually aid you in finding the looking glass. Beware though, it may trap you in this universe, the gatekeeper lectured. After the gatekeeper finished his statement, the giant door opened. Kris stepped forward first as Duran, Brandy, and Anna followed. That Iria is an amazing woman, Duran said as he looked around. This place looks like ancient Brazil, pyramid-like structures and stone architecture, Brandy said as she and Anna walked forward, scouting the area. A bright ray of light shot into the air from a nearby pyramid. We need to go there, Anna said as she motioned to the others. Team X quickly arrived in front of the pyramid. Iria appeared. You guys made it first. Not surprised, greeted Iria. This place is amazing, Brandy said as an orange aura surrounded her. Brandy, look at your hands, Duran yelled as he pointed. Brandy looked at her hands as the flames around her hands increase in size. Don't panic, the ancient zone is manifesting your abilities, warned Iria. A small static blast flew by Kris's face. She's not the only one, Gabriel said as his static aura pulsed. Iria looked around. Where's the rest of your team? Questioned Iria. Gabriel laughed. I left them behind. Their constant arguing was slowing me down. If I would have ditched them earlier, I may have beat you here, explained Gabriel. You just left them? Asked Anna. I did. They are hopeless right now. I doubt they will even make it here, responded Gabriel. Who cares about them? Brandy interrupted. Gabriel, yelled Tanya. Where did you go? Asked Daniel. I came here, obviously, Gabriel replied. But how did you get here before us? Asked Angela. You guys got lost, answered Gabriel. We did, and Daniel and Angela got turned into stone, yelled Tanya. Okay, that is enough, boomed Iria. Darren appeared. Now that you are all here, it is time to begin, Darren announced. As you all know, myself and Darren have brought you here to teach you the elements, continued Iria. The elements symbolize all things living and not living in any universe, lectured Darren. This is not a joke, and this will not be easy, Iria lectured as well. In light of your recent bickering, we will train the 8 of you individually, boomed Darren. After your training, we will set you off to search for the looking glass, continued Iria. The looking glass will be your way home and the winning stipulation for your team becoming might defenders, lectured Darren. The looking glass is very powerful. It could show you your past, present, or even your future. Use what you may see wisely, Iria lectured as well. Metal is so far the hardest element to control. Kris, your element will be interesting because it requires the user to see things that others cannot see, said Darren. Gabriel, you are first, said Iria. Iria and Darren walked over to Gabriel. See you on the battlefield, Gabriel said as he pointed to Kris. Darren, Iria, and Gabriel disappeared. The three of them appear in the industrial zone. Okay, Gabriel, let's get started, said Iria. When you are using your abilities, your mind and body must be in sync. Let your ambitions build your energy, Darren lectured. Your test will be to generate electricity, Iria said as she stepped back. We will tell you when to stop, added Darren as he did the same. Gabriel got into his fighting stance as his static aura grew. A small aura of electricity surrounded Gabriel's hands. More, ordered Darren. Let your mind increase your power, Iria added. Gabriel began to bring in more electricity from all over the industrial zone. Darren and Iria flew into the air. A strong gust surrounded by electric bolts surrounded the area. Control it, Iria said into Gabriel's mind. Kris! Gabriel yelled as he focused all of the electricity he gathered into his hands. Gabriel smirked. You are dead, yelled Gabriel. Gabriel shot a massive blast of electricity destroying 2 nearby buildings. Impressive, Darren complimented. Don't forget, if you generate too much electricity, you will not be able to control it, giving your opponent the advantage, lectured Iria. When we set you off to find the looking glass, practice generating electricity and most of all controlling it, Darren said as he and Iria walked toward Gabriel. The three teleported back to the ancient zone. Daniel, you're next, Darren announced. Iria, Darren, and Daniel teleported to the forest zone. Daniel, your element relies on spirituality as well as your mind, lectured Iria. Use your mind, body, and spirit to call water into this forest, Darren continued. Your test is to flood this forest, Iria said as she and Darren disappeared. Daniel stood there and raised his arms. You two are crazy, I can't control water, yelled Daniel. Use your mind, actually think about calling water to you. Didn't you listen to anything we said? Iria lectured into Daniel's mind. Daniel continued to stand there. I heard you, Daniel muttered. Daniel closed his eyes and raised his left arm. With that, a wave of water came from his left, washing away the smaller trees. Daniel raised his right arm. A massive wave of water came from his right, flooding the forest. Daniel stood knee-deep in water. Now you must control it, Darren said into Daniel's mind. A blue aura surrounded Daniel. Daniel raised his arms in victory, and all of the water floated in the air. Daniel threw his arms to the side and all of the water flew away. Darren and Iria appeared. You liked that? I came up with that myself, Daniel said as he celebrated. You did great, encouraged Iria. Just remember to use your abilities efficiently, your mind has to be ready and in the right place. Good job, Darren said as he, Iria, and Daniel disappeared. They arrived in the ancient zone. Babe, you're all wet, Tanya said as she kissed Daniel. Kris flashed them a dirty look. We like your enthusiasm, that is why you're next, Tanya, Darren said as he motioned for Tanya to step forward. Darren, Iria, and Tanya teleported into the inside of a pyramid in the ancient zone. Tanya stood there and looked around the room. Iria looked at Tanya. As you can see, this room is surrounded by metal, started Iria. Since metal is extremely hard to control, we will start you off with something light, lectured Darren. This table here is made of metal. Since you are a beginner, you must first learn how to fuse with metal so it will be easier to control, Iria lectured as well. Your challenge will be to fuse with the metal, shape it, and manipulate the top of the table to use as a weapon, instructed Darren. Tanya stepped in front of the table. Tanya got into her fighting stance and stared at the table. Touch it, yelled Iria. Tanya slowly touched the metal table. It's not doing anything, Tanya exclaimed. Your mind and body are not one. For you to use any element, your mind and body must work as one. Try it, boomed Darren. Tanya closed her eyes as a pink aura surrounded her. Tanya's hand slowly fused into the top of the metal table. Now you have to control the metal, Iria said as she stepped closer. Tanya struggled. It's too heavy, yelled Tanya. Your mind and body are the strength you use to control the metal, not your physical strength, Darren informed. Tanya stopped struggling and suddenly the metal on the top of the metal table surrounded Tanya's arm. Tanya smiled and the metal around her arm transformed into a sword. Tanya smashed the base of the metal table. Outstanding, Darren said as he congratulated Tanya. Now that you have fused with metal, over time you will be able to call metal, and use other metal objects as a weapon, lectured Iria. If you call too much metal, not even your spiritual power will be able to move it. Wind can blow away any metal, if strong enough, so be careful of that as well, Darren continued. Darren, Iria, and Tanya teleported back to the other seven's location. They arrived to Kris and Gabriel arguing. Why don't you guys train Kris now, so when you bring him back, I can beat him this time, Gabriel said sarcastically. Gabriel, you know, that is not why we are here, yelled Tanya. Gabriel laughed. That's right, we are here competing to defend some universe that we don't even know exists, or not yet, Gabriel said as he continued to laugh. A pink aura once again surrounded Tanya. She clenched a metal shard from the base of the table and transformed it into a knife. Are you defending him? Questioned Gabriel. No, I'm stopping you so that Darren and Iria can train the next person. You wouldn't hurt little old me, would you? Tanya responded as she got into Gabriel's face. Gabriel stepped back. With that solved, Angela, you are next, said Darren. Darren, Iria, and Angela teleported to the forest zone. The ground is all wet. What is this? Asked Angela. Darren and Iria laughed. Your challenge is what this is, Iria answered. And what exactly is that? Inquired Angela. Daniel provided the water. Now your challenge will be to grow trees, and manipulate them, effectively controlling wood, lectured Darren. Angela laughed. I would love to see myself grow trees. I'll pay you if I can do that, Angela responded. Enough games, let's do this. Use your mind, body, and soul. I am only going to tell you once, boomed Darren. Angela stood there. Become one with this forest, think of trees and a thriving environment, encouraged Iria. Okay, Angela said as she got into her fighting stance. A small green aura surrounded Angela as roots started to surface from the ground. Good, now concentrate harder, Iria yelled. The ground slowly began to shake as Angela raised her arm. At that moment a tree grew right in front of her. Now you have to move it, yelled Iria. Angela's aura continued to grow as 3 more trees grew. Angela threw her arm to the side and the first tree crashed into one of the other 3. In succession, Angela did the same with the other 2. My God, how did I do that? A shocked Angela wondered. Iria stepped toward Angela. You used your mind. The forest zone increases your spiritual abilities, informed Iria. In the future, remember, your abilities will rely on your spirit because your abilities stem from the earth, so you won't be able to do this whenever you want, and you won't have the forest zone to help you. Train your abilities wisely, Angela, Darren said as he congratulated her. They teleported back to the ancient zone. Okay, Tanya and company, your preliminary elemental training is complete, announced Darren. Team X, you're next, starting with you, Kris, Iria replied. That's good, you get to find out what element you are going to learn, Duran said as he and Kris high-fived. Kris stepped forward. Good luck, yelled Anna and Brandy. Kris gave his team the thumbs up as he, Darren, and Iria disappeared. Kris appeared in a room of complete darkness. Darren, Iria. Kris yelled. It's time for your challenge, Iria said into Kris's mind. My challenge is a dark room, Kris yelled. It is, your element will be darkness. Your challenge will be to use these abilities to find your way out of this room. Use your mind to see the way out, lectured Darren. Kris began to feel around. There are walls everywhere in here, Kris said as he ran into a wall. Kris continued to feel his way around for about 10 minutes. All right, Kris, let's concentrate, he said to himself. A purple aura surrounded him and he fell to the ground. What's happening? Kris yelled. Your abilities are manifesting, open your eyes, commanded Iria. Kris opened his eyes and looked around. Kris started laughing uncontrollably. I can see everything now, you guys put me in a maze, clever, he said sarcastically. Kris eventually found his way out of the room. Good job, Darren complimented as he looked at Kris. I can't see a thing, Kris said as the light shined into his whited-out eyes. The purple aura once again surrounded him and his eyes returned to normal. That is just the start of your abilities, you will now be able to see things that cannot, lectured Iria. Furthermore, you will also be able to summon things that are not of the normal world. You have a long way to go. This element has only been mastered by one person before you, Darren continued. Your abilities are universal, from all things unseen, continue to use your mind to discover more, finished Iria. They teleported back to the ancient zone. Hey Kris, yelled Gabriel. Gabriel shot a bolt of electricity at Kris. Kris put his hand up to block it as his hand was surrounded by a purple flame. Kris smirked. Don't test me, Kris said as his aura shined. Gabriel smirked as well. Brandy, you're next, said Iria. Good luck Brandy, Kris said as he hugged her. I'll do my best, Brandy responded while walking toward Darren and Iria. Darren, Iria, and Brandy appeared deep into the ancient zone. Brandy, your abilities have already manifested via your excitement when you arrived here, started Iria. But, you were not in control, now is that time, let your fiery personality bring out the fire, and let your mind control it, Darren lectured. Brandy began to jump in place as an orange aura surrounded her. She then got into her fighting stance. Fire will be easiest to emit from your hands, so start there. Your challenge will be to not only surround your body in flames, but be able to command it as well, Iria ordered. I'm ready, yelled Brandy. Flames started to surround Brandy's hands. She began to throw flames around and soon gained control of them. Now concentrate your body and mind to make the flames surround you, Darren yelled. Brandy's aura shined brighter as she yelled. She closed her eyes and was brought down to one knee. She opened her eyes as her clothes burned off of her. Brandy stood there in her fighting stance with her entire body surrounded by flames. Now this is hot, Brandy said as she burned all of the grass around her. Excellent job, Iria said, congratulating her. The flames around Brandy whisked away. Now in the future you must be aware of your emotions. When using your abilities, if your mind drifts to dark places, you will not be able to control the flames, lectured Darren. Let's go get you some clothes. I will use my illusion abilities so you won't be seen like this, Iria said as they disappeared. They arrived back in the ancient zone. Brandy walked over to her bag and pulled some clothes out. We've been moving along quite well, we have 2 more left, before we move on to the challenge. Iria said excitedly. Next up will be you, Duran, announced Darren. Duran and Kris once again pounded fists. I've been waiting for this, Duran said as he stepped toward Darren and Iria. They teleported to the forest zone. Sorry to keep you waiting so long, started Darren. Your element is a little different from some of the others, Iria added. How is that? Asked Duran. Because of your high spiritual awareness, we selected the element of earth for you. Although you will be able to control things related to the earth, your element is also focused on spirits and the earth's energy as a whole, lectured Darren. In this challenge, you will only focus on gathering energy from living things, which is the essence of the earth, so think of living things, and keep your mind, body, and soul as one, Iria said as she smiled. Duran nodded and got into his fighting stance to concentrate. The ground began to heavily shake as Duran's aura shined in a bright green color. Rocks began to rise in the air and circulate Duran. I feel energized, yelled Duran. Duran walked over to a large boulder. Duran's aura continued to grow. Suddenly his arm grew. I see now, Duran yelled as he smirked. Duran gathered more energy and smashed the boulder. Duran's arm returned to its normal size. You seem to have already grasped the basic nature of your element, Darren replied. Remember, your element is all spiritual, but we are sure that won't be a problem for you, informed Iria. As you search for the looking glass, incorporate your spirit into your fighting techniques so that your elemental abilities can become unstoppable, lectured Darren. Duran's hand glowed green as he crushed a rock. I'm ready, let's head back so you guys can train Anna, suggested Duran. They teleported back to the ancient zone. You're back, how did it go? Asked Kris. Duran smiled as he got into his fighting stance. Duran's aura shined as he gathered energy. It went well, Duran answered. You can make your body stronger, badass, Kris said as he and Duran pounded fists. You guys can stop showing off, Daniel interrupted. He's right, let them take Anna, so we can get on with this looking glass thing, added Angela. Anna stepped forward. I'm ready, Anna said as she walked over to Darren and Iria. Darren, Iria, and Anna teleported to the forest zone. We chose to train you and Duran last, because we believe that with your high spiritual abilities, you two would need less work, started Iria. Wind is an invisible element, you will very rarely be able to couple your physical techniques with it, continued Darren. So what do I have to do? Anna questioned. Darren and Iria looked at each other and then turned to Anna. Your challenge will be somewhat simple, do you feel the wind? Asked Darren. Yes, answered Anna. Your challenge will be to control the wind to blow things away, use your spirit to call the wind, Darren instructed. Anna got into her fighting stance. Anna's body began to shine with a gray aura. As Anna concentrated, the wind began to blow harder. Okay, now you need to be able to control the wind and stop it, yelled Iria as she struggled to stand still. Anna's aura exploded and the trees and other things around her started to blow away. Anna continued to control the wind as she turned her finger in circles. A windstorm formed and Anna floated in the air. I like this, I can't wait to show the others, Anna yelled as she slowly landed back on the ground. Darren and Iria stood there amazed at Anna's progress. So is that it? Asked Anna. Darren walked toward Anna. Yes dear, I believe it is, Darren answered. Your abilities rely on your spirit. If your spirit remains in sync with your body, you will not lose control, and you will be able to create storms, tornadoes, and sometimes generate electricity, expanded Iria. Alright, let's go, Anna suggested. They arrived back in the ancient zone. Alright everyone, your basic elemental training is complete, from here on out, and Darren will not directly influence what happens from here on, announced Iria. Also, you will no longer be granted entrance into the ancient zone, and it is now your responsibility to train your elemental abilities, lectured Darren. As said before, your challenge will be to find the looking glass. It won't be easy, this place is filled with beasts and traps. There will also be clues as to where the looking glass may be, use them wisely, finished Iria. Darren and Iria disappeared. So Kris, are you ready? Asked Gabriel. Kris's aura started to shine. I am, I know what you want, but you aren't going to get it, my team is going to find the looking glass, and you, Tanya, Angela, and Daniel are going to go back home, the losers that you are, Kris said as he turned around. A bolt of electricity flew by Kris. Kris faced Gabriel. You will pay for bringing us into this, but I must say, I do dig the cool abilities that I now have, replied Gabriel. You're not the only one, now me and Tanya can give Anna and Brandy what they deserve, laughed Angela. Daniel stepped in front of Duran, and I haven't forgotten about you, I owe you for what you did to me yesterday, Daniel said as he smirked. Anytime, any place, responded Duran. Tanya tossed her knife back and forth into the air as she walked over to Anna. You didn't beat me, you beat Angela, next time it will be just you and me, Tanya said as she raised her knife. Anna smiled as her aura shined. Anna blew Tanya a few feet away. I accept that challenge, Anna said as she laughed. Tanya and company suddenly disappeared. Where did they go? Asked Duran. Who cares? Brandy answered. At that moment, Kris and his team disappeared as well. With basic elemental training complete, it seems that both teams have been set forth into another place within the Drasil universe as the race to find the looking glass will begin, somewhere in the jungle zone. Tanya was out training, as Gabriel, Daniel, and Angela are having a conference once again. I like your plan to use Tanya to get to him, but are you sure that you want to do it that way? Questioned Gabriel. He's right, Daniel, she's still our friend and your girlfriend, Angela agreed. Look, I know what you guys mean, but she wants to go through with this defenders thing, she respects him, boomed Daniel. Gabriel and Angela looked at each other. We could just kill him ourselves, Angela suggested. He will be ready for that, Daniel shot back as he stood up. She's been training a lot lately, we could use that to reel Kris in, suggested Gabriel. I don't know about you two, but I could care less about defending a universe I've never seen before, replied Angela. Daniel and Gabriel nodded for her to not get suspicious. We need to go along with this looking glass thing, but concentrate on finding Kris, lectured Gabriel. Tanya walked into their camp. Why do you want to find Kris? Asked Tanya. No reason, responded Gabriel. Tanya stared at Gabriel. You've been acting weird lately, you have been obsessed with doing in Kris, ever since this started, Tanya speculated. Kris will get his when this is all over, boomed Gabriel. Tanya flashed Gabriel a dirty look and then turned to Angela and Daniel. While I was out training, I found our first clue, we need to head for the ruins in this jungle in the morning, lectured Tanya. Meanwhile, at Team X's camp somewhere in the jungle zone, Duran and Brandy were out training. Kris and Anna were together looking at the stars. So Kris, before we go any further with this, I want to know, what is your past with Tanya? Asked Anna. All that starts with Brandy, Kris responded. I remember what you told me about what happened with you two, replied Anna. Kris nodded. After I left Nick's group, I swore to get revenge on him for taking Brandy from me, started Kris. What did you do? Asked Anna. I started to search Paloma, to find people who disliked Nick just as much as I did. I ran into an old friend, who just so happened to hang out with Tanya. Naturally they did not want me around, because of my past affiliation with Nick, continued Kris. Anna looked puzzled. So you hung out with them anyway? Asked Anna. Kris nodded. They disliked Nick and his group as well. Shortly after I started being around them enough, I developed a small crush on Tanya, Kris continued. Small? Asked Anna, sarcastically. Back then it was small. I told them why I left Nick's group. Tanya was not a big fan of Brandy in addition, and after a month or two they all began to respect me as one of them, Kris went on. I don't get it, why does Tanya act like she doesn't like you so much? Asked Anna. Kris sighed as he looked into Anna's eyes. I left their group when Brandy broke up with Nick. I returned to the group, along with a freshman by the name of John Marquez, a loyal friend of mine to this day, Kris said as he stood up. Where is he now? Asked Anna. I don't know, he was gone by the middle of the second semester that year, but this new group concentrated on Nick. Tanya's group and mine merged, but it was short-lived after I left to reunite the wolf pack. She spent the rest of that year and all of this one trying to embarrass me, finished Kris. I see, she has her reasons, but I can feel her respect for you. I promise to stand by you through this, no matter what, Anna replied as she hugged Kris. Duran and Brandy arrived back. You two lovebirds get enough time to hang out with each other? Asked Duran. Brandy slapped Duran on the back of his head. Shut up, Duran. Anyway, me and Blockhead found our first clue, Brandy said as she sat down. We have to head to the ruins near here, we might find something there, lectured Duran. They all agreed. Come on, Anna, let's go train for a bit before we rest, suggested Brandy. We won't be long, Anna assured. Anna and Brandy left Team X's camp. Now that they are gone, me and you can talk, Duran said as he turned over to Kris. Talk about what? Asked Kris. About Tanya. I know that you don't like her that way anymore, but she's last year's news. For us to be successful here, you need to bury your past with her, lectured Duran. Kris looked at the stars once again. Last year, on the last day of school. So Kris, are you going to visit me over the summer? Asked Brandy. Not sure, I've been through a lot this year. I think that I'm going to do some soul searching and keep in contact with Duran, and get ready for my senior year, Kris replied. Well, that's understandable, but you always have a home with me as a friend, you know, assured Brandy. Tanya and Angela walked up. Last day of school, I don't have to see you for a whole 3 months. I will enjoy that, Tanya said as she stepped in front of Kris. What do you want, Tanya? Asked Kris. Tanya briefly glared at Kris. I just came here to tell you that just because this school year is over, That doesn't mean I will forget that you ditched my group to hang out with her and your band of misfits, boomed Tanya. Tanya, you heard me loud and clear the first time, don't sing it, just bring it, Kris responded. Tanya laughed. Well said, I will see you in September, Tanya said as she turned around. Tanya and Angela walked away. God, I hate her, said Brandy. I don't. They took me in when I stopped being friends with you, Kris said as he and Brandy started to walk toward the gate. I remember that, and now they are your new enemies, just don't forget what I said, you have a friend in me always, Brandy said as she hugged Kris. Kris smiled. Thank you, replied Kris. Kris and Brandy went their separate ways. Present day. Duran, I know that you don't like what Tanya has done to me emotionally, but last school year changed me a lot. Tanya thinks I'm a misfit, she always has, this is my opportunity to prove her wrong. I will become the best fighter in the universes, Kris said boldly. Duran smiled. That's the Kris I know, I can't comment on last year because I wasn't there, so if you feel that way use it to your advantage, Duran said as he sat down. He and Kris pounded fists. Anna and Brandy arrived back and the group soon went to sleep for the night. End of chapter 6.